an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 2, Episode 7. Who's the cool girl Josh is dating? In this episode, so this is one of those episodes where you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief, because I do not see this girl being interested in Josh Chan. And I'm not even an ex trying to rationalize things. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. So, guys, I want to let you know, last time, like the last installment on this Crowdcast feed for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I did a live watch. It was fun because I got to do a live watch with Owen, who happened to be home at the time. And I found out afterwards that Megan had gotten in touch with Candace, who does my scheduling stuff, and asked to change the live watch episode to a different one. But I did not see the change and didn't update my calendar, which, so I wound up doing a live watch of an episode that wasn't intended to be the live watch. And Megan assured me that it was fine. I would like to try and make it up to her. So when we roll around to the episode that she did want there to be a live watch for, I'm thinking I might just try and do that, and we'll see if, I'm able to fit it in. But for those of you who found it odd, maybe, that was the episode she wanted us to do a live watch for, that was a misunderstanding. So my bad, and I'm sorry about that. I really need to probably check the spreadsheet and change my schedule in response to that a little bit more consistently. So anyway, let's start talking about this episode. This is an episode that has a lot less relatable stuff in it for me, because I haven't really gone through a lot of dating in the modern social media era. I have been in 3 major relationships in the past 15 years, and did not really date outside of that. And the closest I came was when me and Brendan split up, and he got into a relationship much more quickly than I expected, and then wound up getting married less than a year after we had split up, and it really surprised me. So I went and checked out who the girl was, but I did not really do an in-depth thing. I was just kind of, who is this? How does he even know her? And she looked to be a really intelligent, really generous, selfless person who does a lot of social justice stuff and genuinely seems to be extremely awesome. And once I started to realize how awesome she was, I was just all right, I think I'm good. I don't really need to know anymore. I have had enough. And that's about as far as I went. And it was an easy thing to find because she's very big with her social media presence for some of the organizations that she apparently represents. So I didn't have to do very much digging either to find her. It was a brief search, and there she was, and that was it. And this sort of stalking of a new girlfriend, the thing is, even though I have not done this, I can absolutely see how this would happen. It's sort of it's the kind of thing where it's almost trying to watch a soap opera from afar, because you want to know what happens, but you also kind of want to be involved in it still, because you're sort of low-key interested in the person still. And that is a constant theme this episode, is Josh and whether or not he's a douchebag or a great guy or really stupid or really delightful, depending on what mood both Valencia and Rebecca are in when they talk about him, and how it'll kind of circle around. For me, that was probably the most relatable thing, is the circling around, the starting to talk about him and beginning with the like, oh, can you believe this bullshit? And then kind of backing up and being like, oh, but he's super dreamy though. And that I definitely get, that's just something that'll happen. But, I was the person in both of my previous like relationships who left. So I have never really been hung up on somebody still in this kind of way. It's been like I've been dealing with grief because of the breakup and like, all of that. But I have never had this sort of like longing still in that attachment after a split. So I feel like this is one of those things that a lot of people probably can 100% relate to, that this is like just me in particular. It doesn't really like connect, but I can see this being a very popular episode for certain people who have gone through this kind of thing. Breakups are just a minefield, they can be really complicated even when they seem really simple. And what's so funny about this episode, and I said this in the intro, I'm just really not buying that this girl is going to be interested in somebody like Josh Chan. Josh is, I'm going to adjust my mic here so that I can sit up a little bit straighter. We know who Josh is. I don't have to tell you guys. And I find it really odd that he is as into her as he is. I want to know a little bit more about that. I feel like that's something that we need to see. And what I mean when I say is I don't understand why he's so into her. I don't really understand being head over heels for a person that it doesn't seem like you have almost anything in common with. This has often been something that I've run up against in this show and in life, where I see people who are like trying to fake liking a thing that their significant other likes. And I understand the effort to spend time with a person. And in that sense, that's fine. Like, you want to spend time with them and it's sweet if you are trying to be interested in a thing that they like, because that's a way to be together. I have no problem with that. But there's another facet to that, which is being like wrapped up. And what I think is going on here, and this might be, my projection, but in the beginning of a relationship, when you are infatuated with somebody, you guys probably have been through this. You're really into somebody. You've been dating like sort of casually, and you're starting to think maybe this is a serious thing. And that beginning part of the relationship where you are super into them, a lot of times you are having a ton of sex. And then things begin to sort of settle, and you don't have that urgency to fuck every time you see each other. And that's when you begin to notice that maybe you don't have a lot in common after all. And I will look back at relationships in like, college and like shortly after, where I definitely kind of thought that I was super into someone. And then as the fucking physical stuff began to calm down, I realized like, oh, no, actually, I just think they're really hot and we have amazing chemistry. But in terms of day to day, we don't have anything to talk about. And I wonder if that's what's going on here, because the scene that we see of the two of them together, the first scene is Josh at this coffee house, which, by the way, looks, whoever did, I have to imagine that this is a real coffee house that they like filmed in for the day, because this coffee house looks precisely like a coffee house named Ultimo in Philly, which has like bar none the best coffee I've ever had in my life. It's unbelievable. It's the kind of thing that you're just like, how good can coffee be? And I would absolutely have said that too. But it's the kind of thing that I could have had like 6 or 7 of them in a row, and I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't really love it that much a lot of the time. Anyway, they have this moment where she's like telling him that she has loved this place ever since it was a pop-up. And you see Josh kind of react with like, what? Like he doesn't know what that even means. And then when he's asked what kind of coffee he wants, she just kind of watches him like figure it out and doesn't help or suggest anything. What Josh does in the end is actually pretty smart. He just tells the barista, give me what is your favorite, which when you are, tip from me to everybody, if you are in a restaurant or a coffee house or a bar and you really don't know what to get, telling your server, give me what your favorite thing is often a really good move. I have not ever been sorry that I did that. But the way that she clearly is like in this world that he is not familiar with, and she's not really seeming to like aid him in figuring it out. And he's like enchanted by her. So he's making an effort here. But I wonder, were he to come to this coffee house without her, would he still be impressed by it? Or is it just that he is trying to impress her and he's trying to be into it for her sake? I don't really see if Josh Chan has free time of his own to go get a coffee that he's coming back here. It just doesn't, and it's an example of both the world that she's in being like, she's making jokes with the barista about all kinds, like there's a joke about Frida Kahlo because of the Frida face that he makes in the foam of her latte. And Josh doesn't know who Frida Kahlo is and doesn't get the joke and all of that. It's the kind of thing that I don't think is sustainable. He is able to sort of fake it in the moment and be like, oh, ha, 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 sorry, I didn't hear what you said right away. You can't pull that off forever. There's going to be so long that you can like act as if you're just a little slow on the uptake before she's going to really notice you don't know what she's talking about and you don't even want to admit that you don't know. And later on when she's talking about him, she talks about how like nice he is and how helpful he is. That's fine, but it's not really like a personality trait. Being nice, you know, being willing to do errands for somebody because you're so eager to please them, that's not a relationship. So I see this being like the first time we see Josh's fucking heart get broken. I think he's going to get dumped because she's going to start to realize that he's just not really part of the world that she's in, and she's not interested in leaving her world. And she's going to dump him, and he is going to be absolutely shattered. And I'm low-key looking forward to that. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, you know, it's not like Josh Chan is a bad person, but he needs a little bit of depth. And I would be glad to see a bit of growth from him not getting his way, because like he has just managed to take advantage a couple of times now, and it would be interesting to watch him kind of get taken advantage of, you know, just to see how he reacts and what he does, and if he gains any sort of insight into what it is that Rebecca and Valencia have been feeling. Because sometimes that's what it takes. You have to kind of like go through what your, you know, significant other also went through in order to really understand, wow, that was really rough. And I put somebody else through this and now I feel a way about it. So we'll see. But I just want to start off talking about the two of them because it's an odd pairing. And I don't like... you know, people can make things work when they have surprisingly little in common, or when there are keystone parts of their personalities that seem to be at odds. It can work. So maybe it will. But I'm just like, if I were going to pick people to pair them up with, I certainly wouldn't pick the two of them with each other. She just seems a little bit, as much as there's like a bit of vapidness to her, she is more intelligent than Josh is, for sure. So that can be tiring to date a guy who can't keep up with you. It's just something that's like, you know, But okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. We start the beginning of the episode in the office, and Paula is eradicating all of the pink stuff from her desk. And I really have to tell you guys, I was heartbroken. I get it. And it's a cruel fact, but if you want to be taken seriously at first glance and make a certain impression, having everything on your desk be pink probably isn't going to do that. It's not fair. It's not correct. But if you're trying to be a fucking high-powered, serious lawyer, you need to look serious. And that's an unfortunate fact. It's like, I mean, Krista, who I don't think she watches this show, has told me about some of the like bonkers dress code things that she has had to follow. Cause she's a lawyer and the offices are so conservative with what they will allow. Like even nail colors are, you pretty much want to have like taupe, and that's your nail color. That's what you're allowed to have. So I get it. And it's probably professionally a smart move. It doesn't feel like she's doing this because anyone is pressuring her to do it. She's doing it because she's interested in changing her brand, as she puts it. So, you know what? If that's what she's choosing, and it's something that she's genuinely excited about because she's entering a new chapter of her life, I'm happy for her. But I really was so bummed because I was delighted whenever we would go over to her little corner of the office and I would get to see all of these fucking accessories that I literally have sitting on my desk right now. And I felt like, oh, Paula, I get you. And then I'm just seeing her literally put it into the trash. And I was like, no, why? She's got like photos of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor on her desk. And it's a good time. So we get an introduction to a new character, George. I don't know how much of a thing George is going to be. It's one of those awkward, like, this is a joke that's been done before. And it's so hard to watch because you know how it's going to go because you've seen it done before. George is the guy in the office who nobody really remembers his name. Nobody really cares what's going on with him. And Rebecca winds up like really kind of cruelly sort of brushing off talking to her about how his mother has cancer because she's trying to really hammer it home to Paula that she's not speaking to her. And I don't like it. I don't care for it. I don't like it. Now, let's talk about Rebecca here because this is one of those, like, I last episode said that I was really glad Rebecca didn't seem to be giving Paula the silent treatment in the office. That she walked past Paula and she didn't say anything to her, but it was clear that she stopped and considered it and didn't seem to know what to say. And so chose to then keep walking because she just wasn't sure how to handle it. And I could deal with that. But then this episode starts off with Rebecca very purposefully not speaking to Paula in exactly the way that I didn't want her to act. Erica says George was in an episode last season and Rebecca knew his name off the top of her head. Just a little continuity error. Well, you know what? I'll go in and out of knowing people's names. I'll be honest. So I'll forgive them for that. She's also very distracted right now. But this silent treatment, this is one of those things that there's a fine line. Now, I am somebody who I don't like to do silent treatment. Like, I'm not talking to you, I'm mad at you. But you guys know I have a temper problem. And I can be extraordinarily harsh. I can be absolutely cutting in a way that when I think back on it years later, I wonder who the fuck hurt me that I was able to say a thing like that to somebody's face. And I don't consider it in the moment to be cruel. I'm not trying to hurt the person. I am trying to get them to understand where I'm coming from. And in doing so, put a little bit too much razor-edged truth on the table. And I have learned that about myself and have started to try to sleep on it. So the end of this episode, when Paula and her husband are having this problem because she failed to show up for his show, and she wants him to stay, and he tells her, I need a minute. I've got to go cool off. That is how I am. And it can come off as silent treatment, but it's me deciding that anything I say right now is going to be either not fully considered, and I need time to really develop what I feel about this and put it into words so that I can communicate it to you adequately, or I am going to be really mean and say something that I will regret and that will ruin everything. And I can't talk right now because I know that. So give me some time and I will calm down. I might be able to start seeing your perspective a little bit more, and I will be able to articulate better what I'm upset about. But it can seem like I'm just ignoring a person. And that's not what's happening here. Rebecca is trying to rub it in that Paula is on her shit list. And it's an odd thing because she kind of waffles this episode, but mostly this scene, between being like, oh, Paula, you don't even exist to me. I'm not even going to talk to you. And then coming up to her at the copier and telling her very purposely, I'm not apologizing to you. I know you want me to apologize, but I'm not going to. I didn't do the thing this time. I'm always the one who apologizes, and usually it's because I did the bad thing, but this time you owe me the apology because you came to my house and you were rude to my friends and you were rude all night. So it's a funny little like turnaround that she does where she's like, I'm going to give you silent treatment, but then she can't like really do it and has to go sort of unload. And when she says all of this to Paula, she's clearly expecting a reaction. She's expecting Paula to engage with her because she's baiting her a little bit. And then when Paula begins to just walk away, all of a sudden she's second guessing the way that she handled this. And she tells her, we need to find a way to fix this. And Paula says, I know, honey, I just don't know how. And that's a thing. You know, friendships, if they are totally smooth all the time, I've never seen one, you know, that doesn't have its ups and downs. And the problem with what happened here between the two of them is this isn't that you just did something that was thoughtless and wrong. It's not that simple. There is something about your personality and the way that we function as friends that doesn't work. And we're going to need to figure out how to fix and change fundamental parts of the way we choose to interact with each other. What I mean is, Paula is usually the giver and Rebecca is usually the taker. And they both need to figure out how to not be that way. But that's a big shift in personality. That's a huge effort of awareness and like emotional labor. And that isn't something that a lot of people are willing to undertake for a friendship. A lot of times when that is what begins to happen, where you come up against sheer personality issues outside of like just, you know, a thoughtless action or somebody saying something or not showing up for a thing. When you start to get into personality stuff, that's when you really have to like take stock on how much effort you're really willing to put into the relationship and whether it's worth it to you. And obviously we see the two of them both like saying the same thing to each of their friends about The Wire, and both of them missing each other. So it seems like this is worth it to both of them. But it's going to be a really tricky thing to figure out. And how do you tell someone, I love you and I want to be your friend, but you're going to need to make some major changes in the way you are? That's a huge thing to say to a person. And like, it can come off as you just being like, you need to change your personality. And it's not really that, but it's like kind of that, you know? So I really like the way that this episode goes with both of them resisting calling the other, because we didn't need this to be wrapped up already. This is a real, genuine fight that is based in who they are as characters, fundamental aspects of who they are as people. And I would not have liked to go into the next episode and see that get wrapped up and then things be better between them already. I enjoy that both of them are sort of sulking and afraid and hurt and angry and not willing to budge right now. That happens. And I had this happen with a friend of mine back in Philly. And it was so funny because like the two of us basically, we were each growing like slightly more irritated with each other as like the days wore on. And then one day she sort of like snapped at me and I unleashed. And we each said some shit to the other that was 100% true. Like looking back, what she said to me, she was right. 1,000% right. And what I said to her, I was right too, but we just didn't want to hear it. And we did not want to hear it from our friend who was supposed to not think these things about us. And eventually I told her I didn't want to hear from her anymore. She came and got her shit from my house that she was like storing some stuff in. And we didn't speak for like a month and a half, maybe even longer. And then one day I texted her and was like, hey, so can we just like stop now? And she texted me back, oh my God, I'm not kidding. I was like looking at my phone thinking that I should just fucking text you. And now we're friends again and she's coming to my wedding and it's fine. But like this kind of sulking and not really being able to budge can go on for a minute. It's just, you know, I feel that the two of them are going to wind up having to work it out sooner. I mean, obviously it's for the show, but also they work together. And if you work together, you kind of have to. But I like it. I like the fact that this just gets drawn out here. So let's talk about Paula and her husband. There's this scene where he is telling her about it's a little concert that him and his other quartet buddies are going to be putting on at work. And he's feeling really nervous about it because he's never sung in front of people at work. It's an interesting thing because I guess I sort of thought everybody that is in his little singing group was also somebody he worked with. And I guess that's just not the case, or even if it is, it doesn't really matter. But he's really nervous about it in a way that's really precious. You know, I just like, I tend to not get that nervous unless it's a really big crowd. And I think that it's sweet how much he's concerned about it and he's warming up all day beforehand and everything. So he's trying to tell Paula about it and she is busy doing her reading. Now, look, guys, I don't remember the name of the actress who plays Paula, but she just really is so good. And she does this, like, I'm listening to what you're saying and doing the bare minimum to make eye contact and make it look like I'm listening, while actually signaling with the whole rest of my body that I'm not interested and I hope you go away and stop talking to me. Until he asks her, what is it you're reading? And then all of a sudden she's 100% engaged. It's a real Rebecca moment for her, to be honest. And I kind of love that the show is showing us that even though Paula is a giver, she is also capable of fucking up in the exact same way that Rebecca has fucked up for her. And I think that's going to maybe give her a little bit of perspective. Oh, I called her Donna because Erica just posted in the chat. That's why I said that. I was like, why did I just say Donna? Her name is Donna Lynn Champlin. She has a history on Broadway. Okay. Well, she's excellent. And I think that maybe she's going to see you can still really like love a person and want to support them and be mad at yourself that you fucked up. And you can fuck up. And that can happen. And maybe you just didn't prioritize as well as you thought you had, or you didn't do the things you needed to do to remind yourself that a thing was coming. Like she says to him, I should have set an alarm on my phone because she got all carried away and forgot. I'm hopeful this is going to lead to her having a little bit more sympathy for how Rebecca has been in terms of not when she says you didn't really mean it, when Rebecca asks her what's going on with her. I've said from that moment that I didn't buy it. She's acting like there's some other way that Rebecca could have asked that question to indicate that she really did mean it. I don't think so. I think that she is she wants something that I don't know what that even is. I don't know what it was she was waiting for. And I'm wondering if because I was sort of wanting her to just say it, just tell Rebecca what's actually going on. And, of course that will sort of bring Rebecca back down to earth when she realizes how serious it is, what she's just gone through. And maybe she's going to start to sort of see how that could happen now that she has something going on in her life that is taking up so much of her time and energy. Because when Rebecca had failed to come through and be concerned enough and supportive enough, she was going through an incredibly tumultuous nightmare couple of weeks with Josh Chan and then burning her house down. All of this. I don't like to give Rebecca too much of a pass. You guys know that. I'm pretty fair, I think. But she really did have a lot happening. And she still managed to come to school to see her off on her first day and come to her house when she was sick. Rebecca isn't a bad friend. She's just not great at it all the time. And that happens. So I'm hopeful that what happened here with Donna and her husband, whose name I'm forgetting in the show. Donnie? Why am I saying Donnie? I think I'm getting that from Orphan Black. Scott. Thank you, Erica. I'm hopeful that this will just sort of open her eyes a little bit to how that can be. Because we even see the chat, because she winds up being late because she is studying with Sunil. Is that his name? And they wind up going over time and she loses track and she winds up running out the door. We see him bring up his dead wife and talk about some emotional, serious shit. And she does not pay attention until he kind of calls her out. And it's hey, we could talk about my wife. I did just mention her. She's doing the same thing that Rebecca has done because she's so distracted. So anyway, what I'm saying is, I think that Paula can be a giver, but I'm glad to see that when there's a lot going on in her life, it's also hard for her. She doesn't somehow magically just manifest the time to sit and listen to everybody. She isn't a martyr who forgoes her own shit that is important to her on behalf of other people. She prioritizes herself and her own goals to a point that might be a little bit damaging to her other relationships. And, that's a balance that we all struggle to find all the time. So I talked about the coffee house scene with Josh. And he gives, okay, Erica, come through for me. What's his new girlfriend's name? Allison Hicks. Was that it? I feel like, Anna Hicks, which, we've later on, Rebecca and Valencia, when they find out who she is, they say that name is perfect and that she's like the love interest in an Adam Sandler movie, I think is what she says. To me, like, and I think this is part of the joke, is that this girl seems fine, but both her and Valencia are overwhelmed by how great she seems. And I like this method because I think that I think it seems clear that Rebecca is, well, you know, as a creator of this show, she is making an effort to not have the women be at each other's throats without cause in a catty way, which is part of why she has turned things around with Valencia and had them become friends and sort of team up. And I think she, you know, it would be very easy to do the like, oh, I'm going to look up his new girlfriend. Oh God. I mean, look at her teeth. And oh God, she went where for school? And oh my God, she does eyebrows. Wow. You could have been shitty about it, but she chooses to do something else. And it is just as believable. I can see this happening where the minute that you like find out about the significant other, you immediately feel like shit because they seem to be more accomplished, better looking, overall have it more together than you. It's hilarious to me because I don't see Valencia being jealous of this girl at all. I can understand Rebecca being jealous because Rebecca is just often a mess and compares herself to other people a lot. Valencia, it's been, I'm not convinced. And maybe that's part of the joke, is that Valencia really is not the kind of person that would be jealous of other people, and yet she still falls into this trap when it comes to Josh. I think that's kind of what we're going for here. But they talk about how her name is so cute and that she has like a permanent like flower crown filter face, which I swear to God is one of the best, like, one of the best descriptions of this actress I have ever heard. That is precisely correct. I feel like if I had been listening to this show without actually seeing the character and I heard that description of her, I would have imagined her looking exactly the way she does look. Because she's got kind of like she's got like the cornflower blue eyes. Her hair is blonde, maybe not really, but like, you know, blonde enough. And she has like the freckles so she has like a sort of a farm girl-esque thing going on. And I just really enjoyed that description. I just wanted to mention it because I thought that was so perfect. There's the scene too leading up to this is both her and Valencia each separately searching Josh's Instagram and figuring out what's going on with him now, and both of them being puzzled at the fact that he's posting pictures of coffee and stuff when he has never really cared about that before. And it's so hilarious because they're doing that kind of like stream of consciousness thing where you like say a word and then you say another word that you associate with that word. And poor Heather is sitting between the two of them, completely unsure what the fuck is going on because they each, eventually she just asks if they're both high because they're each acting so weird. And like, I thought this scene was played really, really well. And I've been in rooms where this kind of quote conversation is happening and it sounds exactly like this. They played it excellently. So then we get the like, you know, stalk me on Instagram song, which is very well done. They do. And then they go and go to her place of business to spy on her. And what winds up happening is that they catch a glimpse of a couple of different clients walking out and carrying little baggies of powder that they're putting away into their purse. And it's the kind of thing that, like, in the moment I'm watching it and I'm just like, of course that's not what's going on. These, first of all, that is like I would imagine 100, like, what would you call that? Probably that would be like $1,000 worth of Coke, right? These giant fucking bags that they're carrying as they walk out. Nobody sells in that amount to a bunch of different people. Secondly, they're putting it into their bag as they walk out into the bright sunlight of broad day with no concern for who sees them. Of course, that's not what's happening. Now, this is the one gripe that I have about this episode, is that from the very start, we know this isn't what's going on. Of course it's not. But is that supposed to be part of it? Do we think that, like, it's that the audience is supposed to know that, of course, this is not what's happening, and we're just waiting for both Rebecca and Valencia to catch up? Because I guess what it's supposed to be is that the two of them are kind of searching for a thing to be wrong with her, because they can't accept the fact that Josh is just dating a truly rad entrepreneur, and they want there to be something sinister about it so that they can warn him away from her. So they're way reading into something that isn't actually happening. I guess that's supposed to be the thing. And that makes sense that, like, Heather isn't there with them, because Heather basically gets cut out of the rest of this episode until the very end, because they need to be allowed to go down the rabbit hole on believing this thing. And if Heather's with them, you know Heather, what would she do? She would go straight the fuck up to Anna and be like, hey, I see these women putting this white powder in their bags. Are you like a drug dealer, or what is it? And then there would be no episode. So I guess that's supposed to be it, but it's like, it's a frustrating thing when you just know. Of course that's not. It's obviously like a cosmetic thing. Come on, lady. What are you doing? So what happens is her cat, whose name is Gravy, by the way, which is a fucking great cat name, gets out and they run over the cat with their car. They do not kill the cat. They get the cat's tail, which gets reattached eventually. I hated this though. The idea of, like, hurting somebody's pet. It's a nightmare. Like, oh no, I hated it. But it's a really nice bringing it back around. Curiosity killed the cat thing. And then they use this as an excuse to bring Anna to the vet with the cat and question her along the way about herself and her relationship with Josh. And eventually they find out that there is security footage outside of the salon, and they are going to be found out. I am very interested to find out if this actually works. I am going to assume it does, because it doesn't seem like the show is necessarily interested in creating a bunch of, like, drama between these three women that is ongoing. But I wouldn't be totally surprised if, like, things came back around and it turned out that, like, Rebecca hadn't deleted it properly, or there was backup files or something. But yeah, so they go back to the salon and break in this sequence of Valencia talking about how she was practically begging me to take the keys out of her bag. And they have to figure out the security code to get in, because they have the keys, but that sets off the alarm, and you need to type in the alarm within a certain amount of time, or else they will call the police. So they're guessing the code. And when they were questioning Anna earlier, she claimed that she doesn't weigh herself. But Valencia does not buy it, and eventually comes up with a number for her code based on what she bets that girl's goal weight is, which is exactly 2 pounds less than her actual weight, which is, in my opinion, one of the better, subtler jokes of this show is what it's like to be thin and still be trying to lose weight. And that it's literally like you could take a shit and be at your goal weight. It's like, that is how little this even matters. I love that Valencia's obsession with weight and appearance keeps coming up, but that they are like trying to cope with it. You know, I really appreciate that. That shit doesn't go away, and it is a toxic thing, and you can unlearn it, but it takes a lot of time. And there's stages, you know, there's obvious stuff that you have to just deal with and stop doing. And then there's other stuff that'll like begin to come up that you're like, oh, that's kind of rooted in the same thing, isn't it? So eventually they find the footage, they delete it, and then they find internal footage of the salon, and they see her using the white powder, and Rebecca, doing her lip reading, is able to figure out that it's for eyebrow growth. And that takes the wind right out of their sails as they realize that Josh is just dating somebody cool and that there's nothing illegal or wrong about her. But then we get the awful moment for the two of them of him bringing in a bouquet. And the first thing both of them say is just like how out of character that is for them. Like they have seen Josh Chan in his good and bad times, and he has apparently never done anything like this for either one of them. Valencia says that when they went to prom, he like got her a like blue carnation from a bucket at a gas station. And that's the only time he's ever gotten her flowers. And then he says to Anna that he has never felt like this about anybody before, ever. And we got a preview of how he felt, at the coffee shop when she says, that's one of the things I love about you. And he says, you love me? And she has to be like, love about you. And that I actually think is a callback. I think that might be almost an exact line that he said something I love about you to Rebecca, to which she replied, love me. I think they might be doing that exact same thing here. They both sit back and are just like, oh, he never loved either one of us. Now, here's the thing. He definitely didn't love Rebecca. I think maybe he loved Valencia, but it just wasn't enough. And that can happen. You can love a person, but it's not the kind of love that is needed to sustain a relationship forever. And there is nothing quite like the feeling of somebody you have had a relationship with doing something for their new relationship that you wanted them to do for you and they never did. It is, you don't necessarily want that person back, but you want to know, why the fuck wasn't I worth doing? And the simple fact is you weren't worth doing that for, because they did not care about you the way they care about this new person. I have talked a couple of times about how when Brendan and I got married, he wasn't even willing to take the time off of work for a honeymoon after. We got married and he took exactly 1 day off. We had the day after our wedding together, and then he went back to work the next day with the promise that we'd save up and eventually go on a honeymoon. We were together for 7 years and we never went on a honeymoon. It wasn't until my father died and left me some money from his insurance that we were able to do something. And by then, we had already started talking about divorce. So it was not a particularly fun trip. And as soon as we split up, he went on 2 separate vacations with his new girlfriend to like California, and then I think to somewhere tropical. Immediately. He never had been willing to take the time off when I was with him. Everything with work was simply too pressing. We didn't have the money, yada, yada, yada. But all of a sudden I'm out of his life and there's somebody new. And within literally months, he's able to do all of this with no problem, seeming to have the time of his life. It hurts. that kind of thing, the fact that he wouldn't make time, was part of what made me want to leave him. And when you realize that all of the excuses that you began to think were maybe just excuses, and you leave and find out for certain they were just excuses, that person just didn't care about you that way. That's sobering. I spent almost 10 years total with him, and he just couldn't be fucking bothered. So I felt this moment with the two of them realizing that this is what it looks like when Josh Chan gives a shit, and they've never seen it before. It's a really I also really like the way that Valencia chooses to deal with it. She's like, well, if he's over it, then I guess we better be, and decides that she's just going to fuck some guy in an effort to start to move on. Honestly, makes sense. I mean, and she's going to be making that fucking guy's night because damn. But I just really appreciated the two of them getting to see this moment together as well, and be able to support one another in the sudden realization they thought they had a thing and they didn't have what they thought. And Josh doesn't see things the way they think he sees it. They both imagine themselves as these great loves that sort of got away, that he probably regrets what he did. And now you can see that he doesn't really see his own behavior as a problem. And even when they talk to Anna, she talks about how he says his relationships were toxic. Now, that's a word that gets tossed around a lot. I think it's fair to use that word in regard to Rebecca. In regard to Valencia, it's a harder thing to know, but I think it's also maybe true. It's just like there's a way that it sounds like he presented the relationship that wasn't fair. But it doesn't, the one thing I'll say is that Anna says he doesn't like to badmouth his exes. So I'm hopeful that he's sort of restrained with that, because I don't think I think the key to seeing whether somebody has undergone personal growth is hearing the way they talk about previous relationships. If they are not able to admit they were part of the problem a lot of the time, and I don't mean a lot of the time as in they were part of the problem a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of times when someone can't admit they were ever part of the problem in a relationship, it means they haven't really learned anything and they are going to make the same mistakes again. If, however, they are able to be like, yeah, they did X, Y, and Z and that was fucked up and they were really not a good person, but I also was not at my best and I did some shitty things too. I think that's pretty key. If they are able to see, I could have handled that better. I could have said something differently. Granted, not some relationships are, you found a bad person. They were abusive. They were controlling, whatever. That can totally happen. And it's just one person was the problem and that's legit. But you can sort of tell when somebody's talking to you, whether or not that's the case. So that's another aspect of me saying that I kind of want her to break Josh's heart, because he doesn't seem to really get where Valencia or Rebecca is coming from. I know the two of them pissed on his audio equipment, feeling like they were really making a point, but he clearly doesn't get it. He just felt like they were being insane, and their commentary about his actual behavior does not seem to have sunk in at all. So maybe we're going to get to see him begin to understand what it was like for them. And it's sort of it's almost like the show doing a similar thing as what I think we're seeing with Donna. She is kind of doing the Rebecca right now to her friends and family. And she's going to begin to realize. And it's unfortunate that so many, I said Paula, sorry, Erica. But I feel like it's unfortunate that so many of us really need to be put in the place of our friends to get it. It's some of us, we don't need to, like, we have the capacity for real empathy and thinking through something from someone else's perspective. But a lot of times human beings don't take the time to do that. So anything short of putting them in that situation themselves so that they also go through it doesn't quite get through our thick skulls. So I think I've talked about pretty much. Oh, I didn't talk about the song, the final song between Paula and Rebecca. They are each have been sort of like left to their own devices by their friends. Valencia says that she needs to get laid. Paula, she calls Sunil and he has to entertain his children. And then we see her and Rebecca looking at their phones, trying to decide whether or not they're going to call one another. And we get a song, and I didn't get what reference this was. I was watching this with Owen, and he says he thinks this is kind of a spoof on I Can Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That by Meatloaf. I don't think I've ever heard that song in its entirety, and I definitely have not seen the music video. And that was the part that sort of seemed to tip Owen off, is that there's like a dancer in like leg warmers that is in the Meatloaf music video. But yeah, this is a really one time I was in an acting class and we had to write out an apology to somebody that we had harmed and then do a monologue based on our apology. And I wrote my apology and I did my monologue, and my teacher waited for me to finish and then said, "So, does anything stand out to you about that?" And I said, "It wasn't an apology." She was like, "Yeah, no, you weren't apologizing. You were yelling at them." And that's kind of what this song does. They're each acknowledging that they really miss the other, that things are fucked up between the two of them, but they both can't quite just say they're sorry without also immediately turning it around and pointing out, like, you got to admit, though, you are really a mess. And relatable. Hashtag relatable. So this song is pretty good. Erica says, fucking love the song. I think it was supposed to be a riff on Total Eclipse of the Heart. Oh. Interesting. Okay. I also love Meatloaf. I have Bat Out of Hell on vinyl. Oh my God. But yeah, so they are just wearing these wigs, these 80s wigs, and Paula is jamming on a fucking like keyboard. This whole thing, it's just so great. She kicks out at one point to the side. What are you doing, Paula? It must have been so much fun to film this, though. And like, let's just talk about this bitch in the fucking leg warmers. She's like another fucking species, just bouncing around, twirling. It's just so good. Oh, I love it. Oh my God, I didn't even notice that. Megan in the chat says, I love how their hair keeps getting bigger. And you're right. I'm just seeing that now that I'm like playing it in front of me. I didn't realize, but you are 100% right. They start off with like kind of low key mullets. And then as the song continues, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's the almost end of the episode. The final scene is Anna plucking this woman's eyebrows and saying, that'll be $300. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye. And the women that are surrounding her, watching her do her work, are shaking their heads like, wow, she is really amazing. And it's kind of great. Look, I love how this show can simultaneously be respectful of the fact that people are into different things and also ceaselessly make fun of that fact and be sure to point out the ridiculousness of being committed to certain things to a point. It's a hard thing to pull off. Like making fun of somebody who has a brow business without it seeming like you're just mocking women or mocking anybody who cares about their appearance or mocking anybody who gets their brows done, period. But they've zeroed in on a very specific thing about it. And it's a very true, real thing. And that's what makes it so funny is the specificity. And it's like, it's a caring about your brows and getting your brows done is something that we can all like. Women oftentimes are into that. So we get the draw of wanting to be this kind of obsessed about brows. But then we pull back and realize spending $300 on getting your brows done is insane. So I just like, that's a really tricky thing. And I just like that this show can like be women positive, but not let women totally off the hook either. You know, like I said, I feel like that's a tricky thing to do. So, okay, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you very much to Megan for commissioning this episode. Thank you guys. Thank you, Erica, for coming in with the names. And I really appreciate y'all. Yay. I think that is there another episode? Yeah. Okay. So Friday is the next episode. Oh, that means I get to watch this one. Megan, which one was the one that you wanted me to live watch instead of this one that we made the mistake? Is it the next one? Next is 9. Is for live watch. Okay. So I think this was 7. Yes. This is season 2, episode 7. Okay. So I can go ahead and watch the next one normally. And then for 9, I'm going to try and do a live watch again, because that's the one that you wanted to do it for, right? Is that the one that I got it mixed up? Anyway, I probably shouldn't be doing this on air because people do not care, but I want to figure this out. So, okay. So yeah, I'll try and do that. I can't guarantee it, but I think it should be okay. So, I will let you guys know, and I'll see you on Friday with episode 8. Till then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.